You've seen it your whole life. The cruel rise, the ruthless win, the manipulators get promoted, the liars get rich, and the question echoes quietly in your mind, why do evil people succeed? Carl Jung had an answer, and it's darker than you think. Because Jung didn't believe evil was a glitch in the system. He believed it was built into the structure of the psyche itself, not as a flaw, but as a force, one that, when unchecked, becomes power's most seductive ally. Let's start with what most people miss. Evil doesn't always look like a villain. It doesn't wear black cloaks or twirl mustaches. It wears suits. It smiles in meetings. It speaks in polite tones and calculated compliments. Jung called this the persona, the social mask we all wear. But when someone builds their whole identity on this mask, suppressing their real motives in the shadow self grows stronger. That shadow, it doesn't vanish. It festers. And when it finally emerges, it doesn't whisper. It dominates. The truth is, evil people often succeed because they've embraced something others are terrified to touch, their own darkness. While good people wrestle with morality, weigh decisions, hesitate to hurt others, those aligned with their shadow move with surgical precision. No guilt, no hesitation, just strategy. Jung warned about this. He said that people who refuse to confront their own shadow are the ones most easily manipulated by those who have. Because if you don't know the darkness within you, you can't see it clearly in someone else. You'll rationalize it, excuse it, call it confidence or charisma. But charisma without conscience is just weaponized charm, and it works. Why? Because most people are asleep. They don't question appearances. They follow authority. They submit to those who appear certain, even when that certainty is rooted in manipulation. This is how evil succeeds. It cloaks itself in confidence. It sells fear as leadership. It rewards submission with validation, and it punishes truth with silence. But it goes deeper. Jung believed that society itself encourages this imbalance, that the modern world rewards persona over substance, that it praises surface-level performance over inner integrity. So when an individual cultivates a powerful outer image, without integrating their shadow, they gain power not despite their darkness, but because of it. They climb not by being good, but by being useful to a system that no longer values goodness. And what happens to those who do value truth? Who act with conscience? They hesitate, they reflect, they ask, is this right? Meanwhile, the shadow-aligned don't ask, they act. And in a system built on speed, image, and submission, action often beats integrity. That's the bitter paradox. Being good doesn't guarantee power. Understanding power does. And those who understand power often don't use it for good. So what do? We face the shadow. That's Jung's answer. We don't suppress our aggression. We integrate it. We don't deny our ambition. We purify it. Because only when you know your own capacity for darkness can you choose to act from the light with true strength. Jung said, "No tree, it is said, can grow to heaven unless its roots reach down to hell." Evil people often succeed because they're willing to go into the depths without fear, without ethics, without remorse. But what if you could go there too? Not to harm, but to see, to understand, to gain the same clarity without becoming corrupt? Then you'd become something rare, a person with power and conscience, a person with depth, clarity, and strength, who cannot be manipulated by charm, titles, or false light. You wouldn't just resist evil, you'd outgrow it. Carl Jung understood something chilling. Evil doesn't need to wear fangs. It only needs to wear certainty. Because in an uncertain world, certainty becomes the most valuable currency. The person who looks most sure, no matter how wrong they are, gets followed, gets funded, gets trusted, not because they're right, but because they offer the illusion of safety. And the truly dangerous ones? They know this. They weaponize certainty. They master emotional manipulation, not by yelling, but by whispering what people want to hear. They offer control in exchange for obedience, and most people take the deal. That's why evil succeeds. It understands the psychology of the crowd, the collective unconscious, as Jung called it, the part of humanity that acts not as individuals, but as a herd. And the herd doesn't follow wisdom. It follows confidence. It doesn't analyze morality. It submits to dominance. This is where it gets disturbing. Jung believed evil people rise to power not because they're evil, but because they're more adapted to a sick system. They succeed in chaos because they are chaos. Wearing a polished ski, they rise through lies because the truth is too slow, too quiet, too complex. And the system, corporate, political, cultural, rewards results, not ethics. So the person who can manipulate emotions the fastest wins. While good people are busy thinking, evil people are busy moving. That's not a compliment to evil. It's a call to awaken, because the game isn't fair. But it's real, and if you don't understand it, you'll lose to people who do. Here's what Jung wanted us to grasp. Becoming good doesn't mean becoming weak. Real goodness, conscious, integrated, unshakable, is the most dangerous force on earth. But most good people never reach that level. Why? Because they avoid their own darkness. They think to be good means to be nice, to be soft, to stay small. But that's not morality. That's fear dressed as virtue. And that fear is exactly what evil feeds on. The moment you start integrating your shadow, your anger, your ambition, your selfishness, you stop being an easy target. You stop being predictable. You stop giving your power away to people who pretend to be strong but are secretly hollow. You start walking with a different presence, one that doesn't beg for approval, one that doesn't flinch at manipulation, one that sees through masks. Because you've taken your own off first. This is what evil fears, not kindness but awareness. Evil succeeds because most people are still asleep, still pretending that darkness is out there in others, never in themselves. But the minute you look inward, the game changes. You're no longer reacting. You're seeing. And what you see, you can't unsee. You start noticing how power works, how charm disguises control, how narratives are shaped not by facts, but by fear. And then you realize, if evil succeeds through unconsciousness, then consciousness is your rebellion. You don't have to become corrupt to win, but you do have to become dangerous. Not with cruelty, with clarity, not with manipulation, with mastery. The ultimate truth Jung laid bare is this: evil succeeds not because it is stronger, but because it is unopposed. And the opposition doesn't come from violence, it comes from consciousness. When you're conscious, you stop reacting. You stop obeying out of fear. You stop idolizing those who radiate power, but have no soul behind their eyes. You begin to see how systems reward shadows, how industries promote narcissists, how politics selects manipulators, how media glorifies surface over depth. And you stop playing along. But the moment you do this, truly stop, you become dangerous. Because now you're not someone who can be bought, not someone who can be scared, not someone who can be fooled. You've integrated your own darkness. So, you're not shocked by it in others. And that's what terrifies those who abuse power. Someone who sees them clearly but doesn't flinch. Carl Jung said, "Knowing your own darkness is the best method for dealing with the darkness of other people." You know what that means? It means you don't just avoid being manipulated. You become immune to it. You walk through lies like they're fog. You don't chase validation. You don't need to please anyone. You become rooted, not just in morals, but in understanding. Not in naive hope, but in real vision. And here's the paradox Jung revealed. Evil people often succeed because they are unified within themselves, even if it's in a toxic way. Their persona and shadow work together. That internal alignment gives them a false form of power. But when you become unified, when your conscious self and your shadow align through awareness, your power is real, stable, unshakable. It's not about pretending to be good. It's about being whole. Wholeness is what makes you untouchable. You no longer fall for fear-based leadership. You no longer chase hollow victories. You define success on your terms, clarity, purpose, truth. Evil might still rise, but it won't rise through you, not through your silence, not through your submission, not through your shadow, because you've already made peace with it. And this is where the game flips, because now you can walk into any system, any room, any arena, and not be owned by it. That's real power, not domination, not deception, but presence. A presence that makes corrupt people uneasy, that makes liars stutter, that makes the mask wearers feel naked. Because in a world full of illusions, the rarest force is someone who's fully real. That's who you become when you stop fearing evil and start understanding it. You don't fight the darkness by destroying others, you fight it by awakening yourself. There's one final piece Jung hinted at. Though few grasp its weight, evil doesn't just succeed through power structures, it succeeds through you, through your hesitation, through your silence, through every moment you feel something is wrong and say nothing. Why? Because society trains us to be polite, not truthful, to be agreeable, not awake. We're told to keep the peace, go with the flow, and not rock the boat. But what if the boat is sinking? What if the flow is toxic? Evil thrives when people disconnect from their own inner compass, when they outsource morality to the crowd. Jung saw this as one of the deepest dangers of modern life, the loss of the individual soul. Because when you're not rooted in your own truth, you become easily swayed by groupthink. And the group, as history shows, is often wrong. Sometimes, catastrophically. That's how atrocities happen, not from monsters alone, but from ordinary people following orders, nodding along, looking away. So if you want to understand why evil people succeed, stop only looking at them. Look at the environment that rewards them. Look at the millions of tiny decisions made by people who say, "It's not my job. Someone else will speak up." Or worse, "This is just how the world works." Jung believed this was the greatest failure of all, the death of moral courage, because without it, even the brightest mind becomes a slave to systems it could have helped. Here's the real turning point. The moment you stop asking, "Why are they doing this?" and start asking, "Why am I letting them?" That's the birth of inner authority. You stop outsourcing your voice. You stop waiting for heroes. You realize you are the one. Not because you're perfect, but because you're awake. Carl Jung never promised that understanding evil would make it disappear. He only promised that you would no longer be its puppet. Because the moment you see the architecture of manipulation, the fear loops, the false certainty, the seductive charisma, you begin to step out of its grip. You start making decisions not from pressure, but from presence. That's what power really is. The ability to stay conscious in a world built to distract you. But this kind of awareness isn't comfortable. It's costly. You lose friends, you lose illusions, you lose the luxury of saying, I didn't know. But what you gain is far greater. You gain sovereignty. And when you have sovereignty, internal, unshakable self-command, you become the one thing evil cannot control. A person who thinks, speaks, and acts from truth, even when it's inconvenient, even when it's lonely, even when it's dangerous. That's what changes systems. Not force, not revenge, but integrity multiplied. Jung believed every person had a role in this transformation, not by preaching, not by shouting from rooftops, but by becoming whole. Because wholeness spreads, it silently invites others to do the same. And when enough people refuse to be unconscious, the entire structure begins to shake. Not because it's attacked, but because the energy that held it up, fear, obedience, ignorance, is gone. This is the deepest reason evil succeeds. Because too few believe in the power of their own awakening. But when you do, you stop fearing power. You become it. Not in a corrupt external way, but in a quiet, immovable way. The kind that doesn't need applause. The kind that builds civilizations, or rebuilds them when they fall. And when history looks back, it won't remember how loud the deceivers were. It will remember who saw through them, Who stood still when others bowed? Who walked forward when others waited? Who stayed human in a world that forgot how? That's what Jung left us. Not just a map of the human mind, but a reminder. The fight isn't out there, it starts with you.